All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakadash. Double honor to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who were well and who teach well. Much peace and mercy to the hopeful elect. So this is going to be a quick report. Something I want to start doing, Lord willing, weekly. Just grabbing a few articles from the weekly topics. Maybe even adding some extra articles, current things that's going around the world, and edify the sheep. So, first article here is ICE launches immigration enforcement action in Maine, and this is something that's been going on a lot lately. You have a lot of people uproaring, protesting against ICE. This is just a part of their agenda. This is a part of what they want to ultimately have in store for these people. Let's read a little bit here. It says a new immigration enforcement operation is underway in Maine. The Department of Homeland Security announced Wednesday. Right, so it's just a couple days ago, according to when I'm recording this. Basically, let's see here. It says I'm gonna just jump around. It says on Tuesday, as residents in the cities of Portland and Lewiston noticed a heightened presence of immigration officers in their communities, they began posting videos on social media and calling a community hotline to report the sightings and some arrests. So, they out there doing the same thing. But ultimately, it's gonna spread even farther. Some places like Chicago, Miami, Florida, you name them, right? They're gonna start moving this group around the United States more and more. These heavily populated areas with Jake, especially Northern Kingdom, but now they're coming for the Southern Kingdom. So all we got to do is keep watching, continue to have faith, and see where this takes us. So the next article I have is Trump's new tariffs on NATO allies causes Republican rift. And this is that two horns that spake as a lamb, spoken of in Revelation, the 13th chapter, around the 11th verse. I'm actually going to read it. Revelation 13 and 11, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Right, so you got the Republican and the Democratic Party, which are all a part of the same beast. So they all have the similar mindset, similar goal. However, they play both sides of the field, the good cop, bad cop role, so to speak. And it says he spake as a dragon, right? He has horns like a lamb. Lamb is docile. Lamb is innocent. A lamb is not going to murder you in your sleep like a ravening wolf. However, it spake as a dragon. When you look into the word dragon, it goes back to Dracon. There's a man named, I forgot his name, Dracon. It goes back to draconian measures, draconian law, right, where punishments for small offenses were grievous. If you stole a candy bar, you will get life in prison or anything like that, to those extent and those measures. So it says U.S. president has imposed 10% levies on imports from key allies after they sent troops to Greenland amid his push to annex the island. So this whole Greenland thing is obviously stirring up the pot. Scriptures in Revelation 17 chapter talks about that the 10 horns shall hate the whore. So America, who is that whore, that great city, starting to make moves. They're starting to make moves to piss off the other nations, especially their allies. You see, which that's pretty much, you know, you can read this article. I'm gonna link all of these articles in the description box or in the comments section. Better yet, Lord willing. But that's pretty straightforward. It's causing rifts within their own political parties. All right, so it says Swedish Prime Minister PM rejects U.S. blackmail. President Donald Trump has announced new tariffs on 8 European NATO states for imposing his plan to acquire Greenland. So I read the first article, and this is the response that the Swedish Prime Minister had. It says Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson has denounced the U.S. tariff threats, calling them blackmail against his country and his allies. The comment comes in response to Washington hitting 8 European NATO nations with import duties for opposing U.S. President Donald Trump plan to acquire the Danish autonomous territory of Greenland. You see, so they ain't with it, man. It says on Friday, Trump said he would impose a 10% levy on U.S. imports from Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and Finland starting February 1st. He stressed that the tariffs would rise to 25% in June. It's June! And remain in place until a complete and total purchase of the Arctic island is achieved. And this is that little horn that was more stout than his fellows. Only America could boast themselves to that level, and basically, literally blackmailing these other nations. And the majority of those nations, those are part of the Ten Horns. Germany, Netherlands. I believe Sweden is in there. Denmark. These are part of those 10 horns. So imagine in June, right now they might be okay with the 10%, but imagine in June when it rises to 25%. How is that going to make them feel? Let me read that first. Revelation 17 in verse 12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Right, so that's like 1958 to 2000. Right, so about 42 years roughly. It says these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast, and that's what they did. They weren't bucking up for the most part. They were just cool, going along with the go along. But now things are starting to happen because the Heavenly Father is allowing these things to happen. Verse 16, Revelation 17 and 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, which is America, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And that's going to be with the thermonuclear missiles. It says, for the Most High put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and to give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of the Most High should be fulfilled. You see? So it's the Heavenly Father that's in control of these different nations. Scriptures say that the Heavenly Father mustered the host of the battle. Let's go to Daniel 7, and I believe, is it down? It's down. Yeah, verse 20. Revelation chapter 7, verse 20. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came, and before whom 3 fell. 3 fell is the Spanish, the French, and the British. Even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. Right? That is talking about America. Right? These American Edomites, whose look is more stout than his fellows. Pride. You see? So the fact that they can come up to you and say, we want a whole country, give us this country, then they know if they do it through military force, it's going to start a war. So they're trying to buy it, You know, they're putting tariffs and levies on these other countries to force them into paying for it, or releasing it over to America, which is going to give America a lot more power because of the materials and the minerals, but also geographically, it is a very prominent location. You know, you can do a lot of surveillance, you can do a lot of information gathering over there in Greenland because it's so close to all of these other different nations. Right. So moving on. Like I said, you can read all of these fully if you want to. This is a quick report. Woman fatally struck, dragged in Brownsville, hit and run crash. This is January 16th. More judgment. You know, obviously the scriptures say who perished being innocent. You know, Yahweh Hashem Yahushua is showing us in these last days, with all of this going on, people are still going to receive judgment. You know, but the scriptures say that because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, it is in the hearts of the sons of men to do wickedness and to the evil. So, just a quick read on this. It says a pedestrian was fatally struck in Brownsville section of Brooklyn on Friday morning. The victim, a woman in her 30s, was crossing Pitkin Avenue at Mother Gaston Boulevard just before 6:50 a.m. So she was probably going to work or something when she was struck by a gray vehicle westbound on Pitkin Avenue. The vehicle did not stop. The victim was pronounced dead at the scene. Her identity has not yet been released, and I'm pretty sure it has been by now. If it hasn't, like I said, most likely they like, yeah, we're not gonna put that information out there. But ultimately, yeah, judgment, man. You know, Yahweh Shemi Shai. Let's grab a precept. I believe it's 1 and 3. Nahum chapter 1 and verse 3. The Lord is slow to anger and great in power, and will not at all acquit the wicked. The Lord Yahweh hath his way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. You know, there's also another precept that says that his judgment goeth out every morning. You know, roughly paraphrasing. So, hey, all we got to do is continue to walk that tightrope, man. The scriptures say, "Walk the just shall live by his faith." You know, enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. You know, you have to really walk this thing, man. Don't just talk it. All right, next article. This is the last one on the list. It says Pentagon readies 1,500 troops to control Minnesota riots. You know, this is one of the big ones. We don't know exactly if they are sending them yet, but they got 1,500 troops ready. That's an army. You know, that's an army. They're not playing around. If they deploy these troops, then you can very well prepare yourself for martial law. Martial law is going to ultimately lead people into a civil war, CW. You know, but it says U.S. President Donald Trump's immigrant crackdown in the state has been met with months of mass protests. The Pentagon has ordered approximately 1,500 active duty U.S. troops to prepare for a possible deployment to quell unrest in Minnesota. The Washington Post wrote on Sunday, citing defense officials. You know, so we're going to keep our eye open, see how this goes. This was on the 18th, right? Currently, I believe it's January 25. So we're entering into the end of this month. This is the first month in the year of 2026, the year of apostasy, agents, and sellouts, and a hopeful year of Jacob's trouble. And we're very well in Jacob's trouble. This is we have already entered the door. We have already stepped foot in the building of Jacob's trouble. Jacob's trouble was in full effect, but not in its entirety, right? We will know when we're in entirety of Jacob's trouble when there is no more job, there is no more restaurants, there is no more grocery stores. It's just all hell breaking loose in America. That's when you know. And then they're going to try to usher in order out of chaos. And they're going to implement the CHIP, the MOTB, written in Revelation 13 and 16. So I want to grab one more. I'm going to grab two scriptures. Daniel chapter 12 and 1. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time my people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. You see, so this time is going to be like a time like never before. And all we can do is pray and hope Yahweh Shem Yahushai sends Michael to stand up for us, and that we are part of that group that's going to be delivered and protected. Jeremiah 30 and verse 7, it says, alas, for that day is great, that so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. So this is the hope. Not only is the judgment coming for Jacob, but also you have a remnant that's going to be saved. Zechariah 13 and 8 says that 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, and the third shall be left therein. So we are hoping to be a part of that third. We are hoping to be a part of that grape of the cluster that is preserved and perfected in the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, and ultimately be delivered and changed. So, Lord willing, this was edifying and informative. Like I said, I pray that this could be a weekly thing, quick report, news articles, things like that. Yaharat Azah. So, until next time, Shalom.